You've more than one interest. How do you decide which one you're going to podcast about? Will it confuse your listeners if you speak about two separate subjects? Stick around to listen to Robin Hackney, host of Spandex and Wine, as she explains how she makes it work for her. Hi, I'm Alison Fraser, and confession time, this is my first episode of 2024. It's not your first episode because I finished a bunch before I went back to the UK for Christmas. I fully intended to do some podcasting work while I was away, and while I did put pen to paper, I didn't do any recording. Actually, that's a lie. I recorded an intro for a podcast, but for a whole bunch of reasons, I didn't like how it sounded. So I decided my break really should be a break. Anyway, I'm back interviewing in my cupboard at home. Now, I don't know about you, and please let me know, but I have a lot of different interests. As well as this podcast and helping women make theirs work, I have a podcast called Scottish at Heart. I'm learning the bagpipes. I love to run, read books, and go to quiz nights, and I also have a family. Some of these I would like to podcast about. I don't think there are many people who would listen to one that encompasses all that for now, though. So instead, I'll keep this one about podcasting and the other about Scottish topics. Are you in the same predicament? Robin Hackney is a fitness professional and until recently offered in-home wine tastings in partnership with a direct marketing company. Her podcast, Spandex and Wine, launched last year and she combines the two subjects. Let's hear from her now. Welcome on, Robin. I would love to talk to you about how you have two different subjects for your podcast.
Oh, wonderful. I would love to talk about both of my subjects of my podcast.
So it's called Spandex and Wine.
Correct. Yes. So I have a fitness business and I've been in the fitness industry for 21 years now. And about 8 years ago, I started doing in-home wine tastings. And so whenever I would tell people what I do, I would always end with saying, basically, my life is Spandex and Wine. And I bought the domain name years and years and years ago, and I didn't know what I would do with it. I just thought, oh, I want to have it. I'll use it eventually. And then about 7 months ago, I started listening to podcasts, and Kathy Heller was one of the first ones that I listened to, and she was doing a podcast boot camp. And I thought, you know what, I can learn something that I'll be able to use in my business. So I'm just going to take this boot camp. Well, I took it, and then I took a course of hers, and I thought, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to start a podcast. And it just made sense that it was going to be called Spandex and Wine.
So it was pretty easy then for you to decide to have two completely different subjects within your podcast.
Yes, yes. And what I've tried to do is mostly my episodes come out twice a week, so Tuesdays and Fridays. And Tuesdays, I typically do more fitness, wellness related, and Fridays, usually more wine and spirits related. Doesn't always happen that way, but for the most part, that's how I try and balance it.
Is it quite easy for you then to compartmentalize your podcast and work on just your exercise podcasts or just your wine and spirits podcasts?
You know what? I don't have a strict format. I like to always just leave it open for a conversation and let it just flow naturally. And so I typically will always ask my guests, whether it be a fitness related, I'll ask them what they enjoy pouring in their glass. And then if it's a wine related subject or guest, then I would ask him or her about their fitness. So I do kind of combine the two, but for the most part, yeah, I do keep them separate.
I think this is a really good lesson for people who maybe like myself, who are a bit more multi-passionate and have more than one thing that they like to talk about. And you're showing that it can be done.
It absolutely can be done because that's who I am. I mean, seriously, my life is Spandex and Wine. So if I'm like that, there are others out there like that too.
Let's talk about your wine. Then we'll talk about the spandex. So with the wine, how do you do episodes about wine? I mean, it's all very well just talking about what kind of wine people like to drink, but are you talking to people in the wine industry? Are you talking to, I don't know, people who sell wine? What kind of guests do you have for that?
Okay, yes. So I have interviewed I interviewed the CEO of a large company that produces wines, and then local winery owners and winemakers here. But I've also sprinkled in some stories of sobriety for a little bit of social responsibility. I feel like, coming from the standpoint of Spandex and Wine, I don't want people to think that I feel like everyone has to be drinking. There are so many fantastic mocktails out there, non-alcoholic beverages as well. So I just look for people that have some type of interest in wine or non-interest and go from there.
And with the exercise, who are your ideal guests for that subject?
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like that is so broad, because when you talk about, it's more wellness, because spandex, that was just a funny thing for me, because that's what I wear every day. um, but it doesn't have to be just about exercise, just about fitness. It can be about anything, maybe mental awareness or mental health, all different types of things that we can talk about. So I feel like I'm just so fortunate that it is very broad. Even though I have the two different categories, it can be applied in so many different ways.
Mhm. You've had some really good guests on, and the topics of conversation that have come up have been really fun.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, I feel so fortunate. I know you probably feel this way too, that I've just met so many amazing people, and it just is happening organically. I'm having wonderful guests now reach out to me too, which is so exciting, instead of me just going to find them. And who I have lined up coming up, I just can't believe it. I'm so excited to share.
Mm. Oh, I can't wait to hear those. Now,
Yeah.
Spandex and Wine, you say, with your business, you have an exercise or fitness business and you do wine tastings. So with this podcast, how has that helped you with your business? Since I know it's still only, in its relative infancy in terms of how podcasting goes, but have you noticed an effect already?
I have. So with my fitness business, I wanted to get more into some online courses. And so that's one way that I have been using my podcast, is to reach more people, to do some online challenges and courses, and beef up my virtual program too.
I remember you telling us, because listeners, Robin and I have known each other for a few months, and we're in this little group where we get together and talk about our podcast and how it's going. But you've mentioned to me about how you want to give up the 4:30 a.m. starts.
It's funny. I did say that. And like the day after I told you guys that, I started my 6 a.m. class, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine not waking up with these ladies every morning, because most of the people in my community, my fitness community, that are in person, I mean, I've had them for years and years and years. One lady has been with me since before I was even certified. So she's been with me for 21 years. So, I mean, they're 10, 12, 14, 16 years with me. So seriously, waking up every morning with them, I can't imagine not doing that. So my podcast is about balance, and I'm trying to find that balance in my life too.
Now, with the wine, how does that contribute to your business?
So my wine has changed just a little bit. I used to do in-home wine tastings, and the business that I was affiliated with is no longer up and running. So I have kind of spun it off just a little bit, and I'm starting membership levels. And my first membership level is a wine club, not in the sense that they're purchasing wine from me, but we're just going to get together on Zoom once a month. I'll give them homework to do beforehand, so they know what type of wine to bring to the wine club with them. And we'll just do this on Zoom and explore wine together. So that's another way that I'm trying to reach people with my podcast as well.
Yeah. What kind of wine do you like, Robin?
Oh my gosh, that is a tough one too. And anything that's currently in my glass would be the short answer. I love a very bold red wine. Now, if I'm out and about though, I usually drink a Chardonnay, just because I don't like the red that gets on your teeth with red wine. So yes, it's either usually a Chardonnay or like a Cab, but bubbles, I absolutely love bubbles too. I'm just not a sweet drinker. Anything else, I'll drink.
Do you have a favorite wine producing region?
Oh gosh, if I had to narrow it down to one, I'm going to go just the entire country. I'm going to say, oh gosh, I'll say Spain. I'll commit. I'll commit to Spain.
Mm. You could maybe do some Spanish wine tours, in the long run with your podcast.
Yes. Well, I do retreats with my fitness business, and I've started combining. We have a mutual friend, Penny Fitzgerald with Penny for Your Shots podcast. And she and I are collaborating to do a wine camp or like a wine stock or something like that in September. So that's super exciting. But yep, I have been thinking about doing some more retreats more on the wine side than the fitness.
Mm. Yeah, there's so much to this podcasting thing. It's not just about getting together and talking, it's connecting offline as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
What have you learned from your podcasting so far that you would like to share with people who are thinking about starting a podcast to help with their business?
Oh my gosh. I would say the best thing that has happened to me since starting this is not just the connections. Like I absolutely love the connections with the different people that I'm meeting, but it has taught me to really slow down and to listen. And that sounds so simple, but it is such a gift to be able to be in a conversation like with you right now. And it doesn't matter that my electricity is flickering and things are going on around me and it's -9 degrees out. I'm just here right now and I get to just spend this time with you one on one, which is wonderful. So I feel like that's
Mm.
the biggest gift that it's given me.
Have there been any obstacles that you've had to overcome that you and open to sharing so that others know that they're not alone in this?
Obstacles would be more of the technology side for me. I feel like I'm pretty tech savvy, but then when you get into a whole different industry, oh my gosh, the different things that I've learned, choosing the different softwares, and there's just so many different directions that you can go. So I feel like the best thing would be to just find one software for editing and just stick with it. Like learn that. Don't be jumping around, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at, and I would say that's one of the biggest obstacles. But it's overcome. I've taught myself, and I've had you helping me, and other podcasters. Everyone is so willing to help and supportive. So it is a really cool community.
Mm. I guess it's a bit like exercise in that, you find the thing that you love to do and just keep on doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say to that, just like with exercise, if you get bored with something, you can change at any time. Just because your podcast is named one thing, you can change it. You have the flexibility to do whatever you want.
I can't see you changing the name of yours though for quite some time because it does encapsulate all that you are.
Yes, that's so true. No, I will not be changing the name. I don't never say never, but I don't plan.
Was that the easiest thing that came to you when deciding to do a podcast that, you already knew what the name was going to be and then the rest of it kind of fell into place?
Yes, yes. And I was so thankful because, we were in the same community of others trying to figure out what the name would be, what it's going to be about. And for me, I just felt so fortunate that, and it was because I bought that domain name and because I say it all the time. It's almost like I had been manifesting it for years and years and years because I had been saying it so many times to people.
Hmm. But as you were saying before about changing, I've changed my podcast name twice now.
Yeah.
And I know other podcasts who also changed their names. So if things don't feel like they fit, you can always move on and do something different.
Absolutely. Yes. Just like you were saying, before with like we were talking about with exercise, if you like to run. So maybe you're running right now, but in the wintertime, maybe you're going to do something different. Maybe you're going to do the stair stepper, or maybe you're going to focus more on strength training. You can change things up.
Do you have a favorite exercise?
A favorite exercise? No, like a type. I like strength training. I do like lifting weights. That would be my favorite. After that would be more of a HIIT class, a high intensity interval training.
Yeah, there's something to be said about strength training as we age gracefully, get into our, you know, menopause kind of years.
Yes, absolutely. By the time we hit age 30, we lose between 3 and 8% of our muscle mass every year. So it's important to make sure that you get your strength training in. And with that comes priority of protein, because as we get older, we tend to not gravitate towards wanting protein. But my goodness, that's the building blocks of our bodies. And we have to have that to maintain the muscle mass that we have and to build more muscle mass.
Mhm. And so while I've got you on here, Robin, let's get your wellness secret. So strength training to stay strong and protein to help us to stay strong. How do you get your protein?
How do I get my protein? Okay, so I like to do as many natural sources as I can. So, I eat beef, I eat chicken, fish, but if I'm not getting enough, I almost always have to supplement it with some type of protein shake or collagen protein in my coffee, something like that. So I usually have that at least once a day as well.
Yeah.
But another secret would be the importance of rest and recovery and making sure that you're getting adequate sleep.
And that's something that many women kind of put on the, I wouldn't say put on the back bin. It's less of a priority. And especially if you are, if you've got children, your kids and
Yes.
they wake up in the night, you don't always get the adequate rest and recovery that you would like.
Very true. And, when you're my age and you're going through menopause as well, that can be very disruptive on your sleep. So I do think one of the challenges, the online challenge that I'm doing right now is called Renew You. And we're talking about the importance of establishing a morning ritual and an evening ritual to help you wake up in a wonderful state of mind, but then also preparing yourself for sleep to make sure that you're ready and you're rested and you can just fall asleep, hopefully, and stay asleep.
What podcasts do you like to listen to, Robin?
Well, I like to listen to all of my podcast accountability groups at their podcasts, but I also enjoy Kathy Heller. You turned me on to Chill and Prosper, so I've been listening to that as well. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kelsey brothers, but they are two football players in the States here, and they are on different teams. And so I like to listen to theirs. They're pretty funny and entertaining too.
Oh, I'll put links to those in the show notes.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk to you about, Robin, because you talk so eloquently and succinctly that we've got there quite quickly.
Oh, well, thank you. I do want to say that I so appreciate you. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your podcast, your group that you have. It's very helpful to, if I'm having an issue, I know I can go to the group, use the search feature and see if someone else has already asked that question. So I want to thank you for putting all that together.
Oh, thanks, Robin. I just love podcasting, the concept of it, getting in people's ears, helping them in or educating or entertaining, whatever the podcast is. And I've learned so much, like just from listening to other podcasts and doing things myself, that I can't help but share those tips. That's the kind of person
Yeah,
I am.
that's wonderful. You are a very giving and sharing person.
Before we wrap up, where can people find you, Robin?
On Instagram, I am Spandex and Wine, and I have a private Facebook group that you are welcome to join. It's also called Spandex and Wine. And then my website is spandexandwine.com.
Awesome. Well, I'll have to get you back on again, Robin, for other topics. I'm sure you can help us with those too. For going forwards for 2024, you've already said strength and conditioning is our best friend, and protein to go along with that, adequate rest and recovery. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Finding your balance, then also with a little bit of fun. So pour something in your glass that makes you happy.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison.
Love two different subjects and want to podcast about both? Permission granted. I love how Robin incorporates each topic into her interviews, such as asking a wine person about exercise or asking a fitness or well-being guest about wine. What topics could you intertwine? Let me know by sending an email to alison@alisonfraser.co or commenting on our socials. Women Who Podcast is on Instagram. We have a free Facebook group as well as our membership community. And I'm just dabbling in Threads. If you've not yet started your podcast, then you might want to jump on my podcast launchpad. By the end of the day, you'll have your podcast launched and have 12 episodes planned. It's all done online, but I'm with you live to help you with any hurdles you may come across. It's limited to just 6 seats and is at an introductory price. So if launching a podcast is on your 2024 list, let's get you started now. The link to that is also in the show notes. I'll speak to you again next week. You've been listening to Women Who Podcast, the podcast for women with something to say.